Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And typically, I read meditations over here, and that's what I'm going to do today. So, I brought both of the Melody Beatty books with me today, because these are my favorites. I did not read them, but I looked at the titles to see what they said. And the title from The Language of Letting Go by Melody Beatty says, "Keep at it." I read the first sentence and I was like, okay, this is good. I like this one. So, July 25th, keep at it. Keep practicing your recovery behaviors, even when they feel awkward, even when they haven't quite taken yet, even if you don't get it yet. Sometimes it takes years for a recovery concept to move from our mind into our heart and soul. We need to work at recovery behaviors with the diligence, effort, and repeated practice we apply to codependent behaviors. We need to force ourselves to do things even when they don't feel natural. We need to tell ourselves we care about ourselves and can take care of ourselves even when we don't believe what we're saying. We need to do it and do it and do it, day after day, year after year. It is unreasonable to expect this new way of life to sink in overnight. We may have to act as if for months, years, before recovery behaviors become ingrained and natural. Even after years, we may find ourselves in times of stress or duress, reverting to old ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. We may have layers of feelings we aren't ready to acknowledge until years into our recovery. That's okay. When it's time, we will. Do not give up. It takes time to get self-love into the core of us. It takes repeated practice. Time and experience, lessons, and more lessons. Then, just when we think we've arrived, we find we have more to learn. That's the joy of recovery. We get to keep learning and growing all of our life. Keep on taking care of yourself no matter what. Keep on plugging away at recovery behaviors one day at a time. Keep on loving yourself even when it doesn't feel natural. Act as if for as long as necessary, even if that time period feels longer than necessary. One day, it will happen. You will wake up and find that what you've been struggling with and working so hard at and forcing yourself to do finally feels comfortable. It has hit your soul. Then you go on to learn something new and better. Today, I will plug away at my recovery behaviors even if they don't feel natural. I will force myself to go through the motions even if that feels awkward. I will work at loving myself until I really do. I think it's a fantastic meditation. I was sitting here, like I often do as I read it, and I'm thinking to myself, the things that I do in my recovery. And this can apply to recovery from codependency, recovery from addiction, recovery from, a toxic relationship. It can be just being a better person, growing, all of that, right? And I was thinking about this and some of the things that I have done or that I do on a regular basis. And, one of the things that I do right now is that I get up in the morning and I say my prayers, and I say my prayers at night. There was a period for like the last couple months, and I do this like every other day now, where I would sit down and I would read several of my meditation books. I had another Melody Beatty book that I was reading, and I would drink a cup of coffee. And I've done that for years, off and on. But it kind of depends on when I get up now. And I take, Boo Radley, he's walking around in circles outside and whatever. The days that I do it, that I take a half an hour to myself to really sit down and read 5 or 6 meditation books, just allow myself to be part of the universe. Those are the days that I feel so much better. Like that is definitely a tool that in my toolbox that I have learned that helps me get through my day, One of the things that I have done, and I still do, is that I, do my prayers and out loud gratitude list and whatever, and kind of take some moments to myself. I typically always try to do that if I don't do everything else. And then I take some time and I ask myself, like, are you ready to start your day? And that is typically before I open my phone or do anything else, because there are days that I'm just not really ready to start my day yet, that I'm just not ready to get going with it. And I would say it's just been in the last maybe, a week and a half that I haven't done my meditations as often as I do. And, but every night I do a 10-step inventory, which is kind of a spot check inventory, and it asks you things like, was I resentful today? Do I owe anybody an apology? Was I loving and kind towards all? And it asks you all these kinds of questions, right? Did I reach out to somebody in recovery? And it's kind of a spot check inventory. And really what it does for me is it allows me to take a look at my day that I've had and say things like, oh, like one of the questions on there, I think it's the last question, is, did I, reach out to, or did I come in contact or through prayer and meditation with my higher power today? And that would be where I would take a look at, like, did you do your meditations today? Did you do a gratitude list? Did you do those things? And it's interesting. Some days that I have really been on the struggle bus are days that I have not done those things, as well as the days that I sit there and I read, 4 or 5 meditations, take some time to myself, really just get calm and centered, Those days, I seem to do a lot better. But there have been a lot of things through the years that I have had to really practice at. Making amends to people, taking ownership. It's interesting because I'm 27 and a half years sober, right? So at 26 and a half years sober, almost a year ago, I did an extensive 4-step inventory. And a 4-step inventory is a searching and fearless moral inventory of your life. And you take a look at your resentments, you take a look at your fears, and you take a look at your conduct, okay? Well, I hadn't done an extensive 4-step inventory in quite some time. And so my sponsor was like, we're going to go back to the very beginning and we're going to do everything. And I ended up meeting with her. And that's the 5th step, is where you share that with somebody else. I typed it all up and I ended up meeting with her for 9 hours one night and 9 hours the next night. When I left there, I felt such an incredible weight off my shoulders. I mean, I talked about things that I hadn't talked about in a very, very long time. And one of the things that's so powerful about doing inventory and recovery is that when you look at a resentment that you have, right? Like with the fears, one of the things I looked at, Boo Radley keeps on going, With the fears, what you look at is, how are you managing those? And is that working for you? And one of the things that I found with my fears is that I just push them down, right? I just act like they're not there. Well, that's not very manageable because they come out in other ways. So we came up with other tactics for me to work on my fears. And the thing that was interesting about my fears was that there was kind of a consistent theme with where they all came from and how I was pushing them down when they would come out, right? But with resentments, you take a resentment and then you explain why you have that resentment. And then you take a look at what areas of your life it's affecting and like how it's affected you. Like, is it affecting your like pocketbook? Is it affecting your ego, your pride, and whatever? Then you take a look at what your part is in that. And that is the most valuable and most important piece in there, right? Because once you take a look at what your part is in that, and sometimes that can even be just like holding on to something or, not seeking outside help, which is like counseling or therapy, by talking about those things or, whatever. It's like, and I'm talking more about like lighter issue stuff, but I had some deeper issue stuff on there as well. And I'm not by any means, and I want people to understand this, okay, insinuating that when we have really dark, traumatic stuff happen to us, that we have a part in that. I don't believe that in any way, shape, or form, okay? But when we take a look at, like, if I'm angry at somebody because the situation didn't turn out the way that I want to, right? Well, could I have handled that situation differently? Could I have addressed it with them? Could I have gone to them? It doesn't mean that it's going to be like, turn out to be this great friendship, but do I have a part in that? And I think that, what it really made me realize was that I handle certain situations in certain ways, and there's a pattern for me. And being that I have so many fears in my life that and having been bullied so much growing up, I typically handle confrontation or going to people and telling them how I feel. I just don't address it because I don't want the confrontation, okay? I'm fearful of that. I'm fearful of then, well, what are they going to say and how's that going to go? And am I going to lose somebody? And am I going to lose a friend? So I just don't say anything at all. And then nothing's ever resolved. Like, that's my part in that, right? Is that often I don't take things to other people. Now, there are other situations that I've looked at where I've had to say, wow, like I was kind of an ass in that situation. I have a huge part in that, right? And I need to make amends to that person. So it comes out in different ways. But that's something that I do every single day in my 10-step inventory now. Like, that was something that I learned, well, my first year of sobriety, but then I did it again last year. And most people do 4-step inventories like every year, every 2 years, and things like that. But that's something that I do every night before I go to bed. My phone's over there, but there's an app that I have, and it's called the 10th step inventory. And it goes through and it asks you these questions. And I sit there and I answer the question, and then I kind of think about it for a second. Like, there's an area where you can put notes. But that's something that I learned, early on from doing recovery or doing can't speak, doing inventory. You know, other things that I learned is this idea of, would you rather be happy or would you rather be right? You know, there's so many things in my life that I felt this need to be right about that wasn't bringing me happiness whatsoever. And today I'd rather be happy than be right, you know? My camera died, as it often does. I just filmed another video, and so I thought that I could make it through with this, but I couldn't. So anyway, but there's so many lessons that I have learned, you know, in recovery and in life, you know, I think, and in life. It's like, I think like one of the greatest lessons that I've learned in my life, this is so corny, but was from like speech class. Like whenever I had to give a speech growing up, I was always so scared, or a presentation in class, I always wanted to go last, right? And I learned like in college or graduate school or something, like always go first, because then you just get to sit back for the rest of the 2 weeks and just listen to everybody else, you know, give their speeches and their presentations. And it's really not that deep anyway. And I think that like kind of, I have that attitude towards life now as well, you know. And it's like sometimes when you have a lot of things you don't want to do, it's like get the stuff you don't want done out of the way first so that you can enjoy the rest of the time that you have, you know? It's like, I think like when parents have their kids do their homework on Friday afternoons, because that way you can enjoy the rest of the weekend instead of waiting till Sunday night at 8 p.m. to do your homework, you know? It's like, let's teach that lesson early, you know? That, no, do your homework now or a little bit at a time over the weekend so that you can enjoy your weekend and you can have a good time. And that is a lesson that I really wish that I had learned earlier in my life, because I'm such a procrastinator, or I was such a procrastinator. I'm not so much now, but I wish I had learned that earlier in my life, you know, to do the things that I don't necessarily enjoy first, because we all have them on a daily basis, whether it's, you know, going to the grocery store or maybe making dinner if you don't enjoy cooking or whatever, you know, doing laundry, whatever it is, cleaning up around the house, cleaning toilets. But I mean, there's so many lessons that we learn out there, you know, that aren't necessarily, I think, directly related to recovery, that are just life lessons, that if you learn the lesson, and I think this is like the greatest lesson of all that I've learned, right, is that I will learn something and then it works for me and then I stop doing it because I start feeling better, you know, and then I stop doing it because I feel better, and then my life kind of starts going like this again, and then I have to practice those things again. Instead of, and this is what the meditation was talking about, just keeping that up, right? Just keeping up that activity of making amends when you need to, or doing, you know, spot check inventories, or reading meditations on a daily basis, or taking a look at being happy versus being right, you know, or always going first in whatever you have to do to just get it out of the way. Like, if you do those things and you continue to do those things, those lessons that you learn, chances are, yes, in life you will be presented with more lessons, but you will have a better quality of life because you will be practicing these things that you've realized already work for you in a positive way. The trick is holding on to that and remembering that, you know, and I get lazy, I get complacent, you know, where I'm just like, God, I don't want to do this today, or I don't want to think that way today, you know, I just want to sit here and just, you know, like veg out or whatever. And so I think like that's the trick, right, is staying on top of the lesson and continuing to repeat these lessons. And I'm not a perfect example of that, and probably never will be, right? But on those days that I'm not, like, okay, this is like interesting fact, right? Like, let's say if it's like a Sunday and I get up and we have like a half an hour to get to brunch and I don't do my prayers that morning or whatever, right? And then we get home and I'm like hurrying up, cleaning the kitchen and doing this, and it's like 6 o'clock and I feel real irritable or something, and I can't really figure out why I feel irritable. And I know that people are gonna be like, oh, Peter, it's not just about that. But it kind of is, right? I'll go back and I'll be like, you didn't pray today. Like, you didn't do a meditation today. You didn't take any time to ask yourself if you were ready to start your day. You just kind of went right into it. This is not every Sunday. This is just, you know, some Sundays, and some Sundays I do get up and do my prayers and meditations and stuff. But then what I do is I stop and I do my prayers and I sit for a moment and allow myself to get balanced and aligned with the universe. And then I'm like ready to go forward, right? And that's starting your day over, like I talk about in my vlog every night, that you can start your day over whenever you want. Another lesson that I learned. But it's about practicing these lessons, and it's about continuing to practice them, you know? And it's like, I think that athletes that are really great continue to do conditioning and practice on a regular basis. You know, singers that are great singers, they continue to practice and use their voice. It's not like they just go out once a year when they're recording an album or on tour, you know. Anybody that is proficient or, you know, an expert in their field practices on a regular basis. So if we want to be experts at being calm, peaceful, and serene in our life, we have to continue to practice the lessons that allow us to get there on a regular basis. So anyway, let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. I hope that you guys are having, is it Monday today? A great Monday. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.